Welcome, I'm the Kaijin Okami. Are you as much of a fan of Ghost in the Shell as I am? This is my Quickie review for the American adaptation of Ghost in the Shell. So Ghost in the Shell is set in a futuristic world where people are cyberized and machines have pretty much become a standard of life. Think of it as being like The Matrix or Blade Runner, if you were. In fact, The Matrix was created because of Ghost in the Shell. So this new movie stars Scarlett Johansson and a few other people who... It stars Scarlett Johansson and, well... If you like the different incarnation of Ghost in the Shell, which I hope you do, because, yeah. It's depressing. Now, don't get me wrong. This movie is nowhere near as bad as Dragon Ball Evolution as far as being an adaptation is concerned. However, this movie has a lot of its own issues. First off, it feels like that they just took scenes directly out of a Ghost in the Shell movie or TV show and said, hey look, this is Ghost in the Shell because it has this scene in here. Remember that cool spider tank sequence from the original Ghost in the Shell movie? Here you go. That makes this Ghost in the Shell. You like Kuze in Second Gig? Well, here you go. Here's Kuze. You like that geisha scene in the first episode of Standalone Complex? Here you go. You like the Major jumping off the roofs in here camouflage? Here you go. This is totally Ghost in the Shell. The problem is, as great as the fan service is of having these scenes that are ripped right out of the source material, it doesn't matter when your movie is a generic mess. Let's start with the acting. The acting is horrendous. Scarlett Johansson is wooden. No, she's supposed to be playing a robot. She should be robotic. What she should not be is wooden. Pretty much every scene which was her on her own, she was horrible at. When she was interacting with other characters, she did a pretty good job. The problem is she does not have the charisma or the leadership skills to be able to pull off the Major. Bato was okay, but I hope that you don't like anyone else in Section 9 other than the Major, Bato, and Aramaki, because you're not going to get anyone else. Well, okay, there is one scene with Saito, but I hope you're not a Saito fan like I am, because all he gets is one scene. But hey, that's better than Ishikawa, Borma, and Pazu. But there's a random girl in Section 9 that gets some stuff. I don't know where she came from. I have no idea what her name is. In fact, most of these characters pretty much went nameless. Togasa, a Japanese cop who is pretty young. I believe he's in his late 20s, maybe early 30s. He's a family man with a newborn child, depending on which version you watch. He's great, except in this movie, he's now a 40-something-year-old Chinese man, and he barely actually does anything. In fact, it seems like they combined Ishikawa's role in the entire franchise with Togasa's role into one character, and it just doesn't work. It's not Togasa. Now, there is a little cool plot twist that does happen in the last half of the movie, which was kind of interesting that they did with the Major, but ultimately, the movie's a letdown. The only thing that was truly like the source material was Aramaki. Aramaki was awesome. Beat Takeshi did a fantastic job, and I give him thumbs up for this role. There is one problem I have with him. He speaks Japanese while everyone else speaks English. So it's kind of jarring to have him speak Japanese, have Bato respond in English, he speaks Japanese again, the Major responds in English, and so forth. If you've seen Godzilla Final Wars, think of it like that. When Don Frye's character spoke a line, another guy responded in Japanese, so Don Fry responds in English and another guy speaks in Japanese. It's not that big of a deal because there's a lot of worse issues with this movie. It's just a minor nitpick and just feels so weird for the first half of the movie. You get used to it, but you really shouldn't have to. There are some legitimate good ideas thrown around here. It's just that the movie dives down into a generic plot. There is not a single philosophical discussion to be found here. There's always been a philosophical debate somewhere in Ghost in the Shell, which is really what sells the franchise, because it is so deep. Here, it's just a generic action movie. If you've seen Blade Runner, Actually, no, I shouldn't say Blade Runner, because Blade Runner had depth to it. If you've seen any American movie, you've pretty much seen this movie. It is so cookie cutter. Everything pretty much plays out how you'd expect it to play out. The villain, other than Kuze, is pretty generic. In fact, it's pretty obvious who the villain is in the first 10 minutes of the movie. Speaking of the first 10 minutes... So the movie starts out by showing us the logos from each production company that had a hand in this movie. Fine, that's great. But then after that, they relist the companies again. And there's like 6, 7 companies that had part in this. So having to see their logo before the movie starts and then having them credited before the movie starts was overkill. That was just unnecessary. And then of course we have Scarlett Johansson appears on screen, the credit, Ghost in the Shell appears, we go through all the credits, and then Ghost in the Shell appears again in big letters with the normal logo. Why? Why did we need Ghost in the Shell twice? But then again, thinking about it, you probably would have forgotten what movie you were watching by the time that second logo appeared, so maybe it did need to remind you what you're watching. The opening is just way too long and drawn out. The opening is just way too long and drawn out. Now the music is awesome. The music feels like something you would find in Ghost in the Shell. I loved it. I enjoyed nearly every part of the soundtrack. But... this was terrible. It was a terrible movie. It doesn't feel like Ghost in the Shell. As I said, it feels like a generic action movie. I don't want it to be a remake of the first movie, or Innocence, or Standalone Complex, or Arise, but I wanted something that at least felt like Ghost in the Shell. Something that was Ghost in the Shell. I wanted at least each character of Section 9 to get a part. Even if it was just one great one line, and that's it, I would have been cool with that. But you don't get that. They're reserved to background characters. And I think they turned Ishikawa into an Australian black dude. Oh, and I hope you don't like the Tachikomas because they are not present at all in this movie. It's kind of depressing. There's a lot more I'd like to talk about, but it's going to go into spoiler material and I'm not going to do that yet. I may do a spoiler video later on after I come back from Anime Detour, but if you're unsure about this movie, don't waste your time. If you have to see it no matter what, by all means do so. You might find something in there that I missed or that didn't work for me that might work for you. There was one guy in the theater that really loved it. He loved Scarlett Johansson's role as the Major. Me, it just felt, She didn't have the charisma or the leadership skills to pull the character off, especially when she was pretty much the central focus. Also, the effects are hit or miss. Sometimes the CGI can look good, but there's some stuff that occurs at the end of the movie that the CGI was awful. Pretty bad. Like Matrix Revolution's bad. I was hoping that because Power Rangers ended up being so good when I walked in that with low expectations, that the same would happen here. I walked in with low expectations and the movie was slightly worse than I even expected. All of my fears were realized with this movie, and that sucks. As such, I give this movie a 5 out of 10. It's not the worst thing I've ever seen. Like I said earlier, it's nowhere near as bad as Dragon Ball Evolution, but it's not that great either. Go see Power Rangers instead. Or go see Power Rangers again. Until next time, bye.